Part 11. Why are all of them passive skills? Author, Bulletin G. Bayet. Chapter 103. A sneer appeared on Yejing's face. In his mind, he had already defined the golden shovel in Zhao Danggong's hand. It seemed very bluffing, but it was actually useless. Cutting space? That's because the space will not move, and it will just stand there for you to cut. But Yejing is a human. A human who can move, hide, and dodge. He can't just stand there for you to cut. Moreover, this kind of golden flash that is as slow as a turtle's speed, as long as you try to dodge, it is impossible to attack him. No tricks, right? Yejing snorted coldly, pulled out the dragon tooth, and rushed forward like an arrow from a bowstring, rushing towards Zhao Danggong. The speed was so fast that the figure flashed by. A series of shallow footprints were left on the ground, and the smoke and dust splashed and flew with the wind. The distance of more than 10 meters seemed to be non-existent. In just a blink of an eye, when he looked up again, he had already shot in front of Zhao Danggong. Draw the knife. Cut off. The cold light of the dragon tooth flashed, and there was a faint sound of thunder. With a sharp wind, it slashed towards Zhao Danggong's chest. This knife was extremely cruel, and it was going to cut him off and split him in half. Damn it! Zhao Danggong's face was ferocious, but he didn't have much strength to resist, so he had to put the golden shovel in front of his chest to resist. And Yejing seemed to know that the weapon that could cut through space must be harder than the dragon tooth, so he didn't choose to fight hard. The dragon tooth missed and retreated with his backhand. Weapon collides with weapon. Although Yejing took the dragon tooth back, he stretched out his other hand. The palm with no scars and tender flesh turned into a fist, and the explosive power surged out of the fist, wrapped in a trace of spiritual energy with not very high purity, and slammed into Zhao Danggong's abdomen. Yejing's cultivation was not high, and the strength and purity of his spiritual energy could only be considered medium. But, no matter how weak it is still a kind of energy that exists in the universe. It greatly enhanced Yejing's punching power. One punch to the flesh. It seemed to smash through Zhao Danggong's abdomen. In the place visible to the naked eye, the abdomen was actually concave. Puff. Zhao Danggong showed a look of pain, his eyes widened, his eyeballs seemed to be half popped out, his throat felt sweet, and a mouthful of blood gushed out of his mouth. Heavy hit. Yejing did not give Zhao Danggong any reaction time. The moment one punch fell, the other punch was ready. Switching between left and right fists. Hit the abdomen directly. When the fierce punch hit the air, it seemed that even the air trembled. Within the sight, the thunder-like punch showed several phantoms in the air, mercilessly. In just a moment, the two fists overlapped, the fist shadow appeared, the air vibrated, and more than a dozen punches hit in succession. Superposition. Superposition. Trigger double attack, this attack causes 3 times the damage. Double attack. Triple damage. Like a fatal straw, it pressed on Zhao Danggong's body. Zhao Danggong's body, under this last triple attack, could not bear the weight and finally could not stand it. The superimposed impact force directly knocked Zhao Danggong's body several meters away, and he fell heavily on the ground, sliding out a human-shaped trace, and finally stopped at the edge of the planetary fragments. Zhao Danggong was seriously injured by Yejing's continuous punches. He lay on his back on the ground, motionless, as if he was dead. The dark spiritual energy that had been staying beside him seemed to have lost the control of its owner. After rioting several times, it quietly dissipated. The dark spiritual energy dissipated, revealing the Omega sublight inside, which seemed to exist between space and time and did not exist in this plane. The Omega sublight seemed to really not exist in this space, and the space around it was all illusory and empty. For example, it was like being separated by a dimension. But Regardless of whether it is separated by space or time, this piece of omega sublight does exist. Yejing looked at the omega sublight, and his heart was filled with uncontrollable excitement. Wasn't it for this long battle? Then, he turned to look at Ai Zyakui, and found that Ai Zyakui's expression was more excited than him. Her exquisite eyes were blood red, staring at the beautiful sublight, and her lips trembled slightly, just like seeing her long-lost father. It's no wonder that Ai Zyakui was so excited. She still had a huge debt of 95 million spirit stones on her. Although she didn't know the value of the omega sublight, she knew very well that this thing would definitely help her pay off a large amount of debt. My money. At this moment, Ai Zyakui no longer had that kind of calm expression. She couldn't suppress her excited heart and trembling hands. Her body was like out of control, and she slowly walked towards the omega sublight. She stretched out a hand and wanted to touch it. You can't touch it? Yejing was shocked when he saw Ai Zyakui reaching out his hand, and he shouted to stop her. Ai Zyakui's hand movement paused slightly, and he turned to look at Yejing, without saying anything, but asking with his eyes. Why can't you touch it? Yejing noticed Ai Zyakui's doubts, and a black line appeared on his face. Didn't you see that Zhao Danggong was just wrapped in dark spirit? He didn't even dare to touch it, and you dared to reach out? I'm afraid I don't know how he died. He didn't know whether Ai Zyakui was blinded or just so thick-skinned. I think it's probably both the former and the latter. Yejing sighed slightly, took 2 steps forward, and took out a small piece of scrap iron from the storage bracelet. Look, you can't touch this thing. Yejing threw the scrap metal at the omega sublight. When the scrap metal touched the omega sublight, a terrifying scene appeared. It was gone. The scrap metal disappeared. It was really gone. There was no sign, no premise, just the two came into contact, and then the scrap metal disappeared. It was that simple. When the scrap metal came into contact with the omega sublight, it was directly decomposed into invisible and intangible energy by the sublight, and disappeared without a trace. It was so terrifying. Ai Zyakui trembled all over when she saw this scene, and she suddenly stretched back her hand and put it behind her back. She still felt unsafe, so she took a few steps back and stayed away from the omega sublight. Yejing had guessed the horror of the omega sublight before, but she didn't expect it to be so terrifying, and she couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Touch it and you will die, touch it and it will perish. What should I do then? Ai Zyakui's eyes were full of reluctance, and she was unwilling to move her eyes away from the omega sublight. She couldn't bear it. After thinking for a while, Yejing said, why not try wrapping it with spiritual energy? After that, Yejing separated a pale white spiritual energy from his body and floated to the side of omega sublight. Just as he was about to control the spiritual energy to wrap the sublight, something strange happened. Before Yejing's pure white spiritual energy reached the vicinity of omega sublight, a dark spiritual energy filled with a deadly atmosphere actually floated past first and pulled omega sublight over. Zhao Danggong said fiercely, let me go, or I will throw omega sublight down from here, and no one can get it. Why are all of them passive skills? Author, Bulletin Ji Bayet. Chapter 104. Zhao Danggong felt that his abdomen was pierced, his internal organs seemed to be displaced, and his bones seemed to be broken. He was in great pain, and blood foam kept pouring out of his mouth and flowing to the ground. He lay on the ground miserably, and opened his eyes with great difficulty. There was darkness in front of him, and then light appeared. When he opened his eyes, he saw Yejing's spiritual energy rolling towards omega sublight. No. Omega sublight is the last protective shield. If Yejing and the others get it, they will really die. Zhao Danggong gritted his teeth, endured the severe pain from all over his body, and with a click, he bit a tooth to pieces. Get up. He climbed up from the ground with great difficulty, ignoring the injuries on his body and the blood dripping from the corners of his mouth. He stretched out his hand tremblingly and pointed at Omega Sublight. Whoosh! Finally, the last trace of dark spiritual energy in his body was completely drawn out by him. At this moment, the dark spiritual energy in his body was finally empty. The dark spiritual energy suddenly shot towards Omega Sublight, and wrapped Omega Sublight in the moment when Yejing was not paying attention to this side. In just a blink of an eye, before Yejing could react, he had already pulled Omega Sublight to his side. He was very fortunate now that his own dark spiritual energy had a special breath of death, which was 1/10,000th similar to Omega Sublight, and could attract each other. Under this attraction, Omega Sublight returned to his side for the last time. Really, it was the last time. Everything happened in just a few breaths. Before Yejing and the others could react, Zhao Danggong had already dragged Omega Sublight and stood on the edge of the small planetary fragments. Behind him was the abyss of billions of feet called universe. Zhao Danggong dragged Omega Ziguang, trying hard not to fall down. His eyes were extremely ferocious, and his expression showed that he was ready to die, as if he was going to die together. He reached out and roughly touched the blood stains on his face, and rudely spat blood foam on the ground. With his broken body, he roared at Yejing and the others, "Either let me go, or I will drag Ziguang to death together." Who can be expected? He showed his willingness to die vividly. Well, he was so fierce, but in the end it was all for his life. Yejing, Wait. Wait. Yejing hurriedly stopped him. "You can die, but please leave the things behind. It is 1,000,000 times more valuable than you." He didn't want to get nothing, not only him, but also Ai Xiaokui. After working so hard for so long, he had come to the last step. How could he let it go? Yejing's words were like an arrow piercing Zhao Danggong's heart. It hurt. Zhao Danggong almost uttered a curse, but then he thought of the current situation and suppressed it. He exhaled deeply, forced his exhausted body, and pretended to be very cruel and shouted, "Stop talking nonsense. Get out of the way and let me go. Otherwise, I will throw Ziguang down." His tone was very arrogant, as if it was not him who was seriously injured, but Yejing and Ai Xiaokui. This kind of words is like a person who owes money is a big shot. Zhao Danggong knows a truth very well. The more miserable the situation is, the more fierce you should pretend to be. At least you can't lose your momentum, so that you won't be underestimated. Not only that, he also controlled the Omega Ziguang to move to the edge of the planetary fragments, making it float in the air. As long as he let go, it would fall into the endless abyss of the universe. After Zhao Danggong acted so arrogantly, he did not forget to send a provocative look to Yejing and the others, which made Yejing hate him so much that his teeth itched, but he did not dare to touch him. "Make way. Let me leave. I will give you Ziguang." Yejing shook his head and refused without hesitation, "I can't make way. What if you take it and run away?" If he was not afraid that Zhao Danggong would burn his boats and die together, he would have gone up to kill him long ago, and he still said these nonsense. Zhao Danggong's mouth twitched, and he shook the Omega Ziguang again, and continued to protest, "Really not letting me? If you really don't let me throw it away." Although he didn't show it on his face, he was panicking in his heart. The injuries on his body were getting worse and worse, and he was about to reach the stage where he couldn't hold on. "Brother, I beg you to let me go quickly, I will never dare to go against you again." He only dared to beg for mercy in his heart, but didn't dare to say it out loud. He didn't think that Yejing and the other two would let him go. Just when the two sides were confronting each other and neither of them was willing to give in, Ai Xiaokui, who was not good at communication and kept silent, couldn't help but stand up. Ai Xiaokui took out a bottle of dark black potion from under her black robe. The potion seemed very viscous, and there were bubbles in the transparent bottle. "Sister, Is there a treasure box under your black robe? How can you take out anything? Is it possible that one day you will take out more than me? Ai Xiaokui held up the black potion and said to Zhao Danggong lightly, if you drink it, we will let you go. A very simple sentence, drink it and let you go. Zhao Danggong's face froze, and he pointed at the black potion tremblingly, gritted his teeth and asked, what is this? Ai Xiaokui said calmly, an ordinary bottle of healing potion. Your healing potion is black. And it is bubbling? What does the lyrics say? Drink the poison you have hidden? Why don't you hide for a while? Zhao Danggong was so angry that his whole body was shaking, and the dark spiritual energy he controlled seemed to fluctuate and become unstable. One last time. Let me go. Otherwise, I will really throw the Omega sublight down. He was almost unable to hold on, really unable to hold on. Maybe in the next second, he would not be able to support his shattered body and fall to the ground. This. Just when Yejing looked embarrassed and struggled, not knowing what to do, a voice, as if it came from the horizon, floated to Yejing's ears. Not only Yejing, but even Ai Xiaokui and Zhao Danggong heard it. I dare to report the ticket, but you dare not throw it down. What voice? Who? The plain voice came from above, echoing under the canyon, and it lasted for a long time. Yejing and others changed their faces slightly, looked up, and a figure fell from the sky and landed directly on the ground. When the figure landed, it was very light, without raising a speck of dust, and even the fragile ground did not break at all. What a terrifying power control! Yejing was shocked, and when he saw that figure, he was even more shocked. The Deputy City Lord of Lonely City, a peak existence of the 9th level of the Heavenly Fate Realm. Long-term acquaintance. Why did he appear here? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Why are all of them passive skills? Author, Bulletin G. Bayet. Chapter 105. It's over. These two words appeared in the minds of the three people at the same time, each with different emotions, and countless thoughts appeared in their minds instantly. Zhao Xiangbang knew Chang Qiao. He had met him once in the airship center before entering the small planet fragments. Not only that, he had heard of the character Chang Qiao a long time ago. He was a peak powerhouse at the 9th level of the Destiny Realm and the mainstay of the new generation of the Changtian group. He was extremely utilitarian and was the kind of person who could receive benefits with a smile, the kind of person who will kill you with a smile. How could he run in front of such a person? I'm afraid this dog's life is going to be handed down. I'm afraid it is. Ai Xiaokui bit her lips and looked at Chang Jiao with a complex expression. One hand had already touched into her black robe, she hesitated, and finally took her hand out. No way. Too strong. Can't resist. Separated by two great realms, someone could easily pin her to death. Let alone resist, she wouldn't even have a chance to escape. It's a pity, Ai Xiaokui secretly regretted it in her heart. When she goes back, she must spend a lot of money to buy better venom, at least to make the poisoned person unable to move. She thought about the cheap venom she bought to save money, and was very upset that Zhao Xingbang could easily detoxify and escape at will. If she had used stronger poison, he would have been taken down long ago, and there would be no reason to escape. When Yejing saw Chang Jiao falling from the sky, his expression suddenly changed and he involuntarily took a few steps back. He knew very well what kind of person Chang Jiao was. Play hard. For profit, you can cooperate with the fire demons of Skyfire City to attack and kill the people of Anan Star. The appearance of Chang Jiao completely changed the situation of the battle. It's like three children fighting over candy, but at this moment, an adult suddenly appears and wants to take the candy away. Can a child resist? Cannot. Damn it. Ye Jing's face darkened. The moment Chang Jiao appeared, he knew that Omega's Ziguang no longer belonged to them. Chang Jiao didn't even look at Ye Jing and Ai Xiaokui. He subconsciously ignored Ye Jing and Ai Xiaokui. In his heart, small people like this were not qualified to be in his eyes. Chang Jiao's gaze, like a scorching ray of light, was directed towards the Omega Zi light in Zhao's horizontal bar hand, with undisguised excitement on his calm face. "Give it to me," Chang Jiao said. Just 4 words reflected his dominance as a strong man, and he didn't take other people seriously at all. Zhao Xiangbang's face turned dark and gloomy. After struggling for a moment, he gritted his teeth and still suspended the Omega sublight in mid-air, suspended in the abyss of the universe. "Let me go. Otherwise I will really throw Ziguang down. None of you can even think of it." This was his last resort to save his life. It was impossible for him to directly give the Omega sublight to Chang Jiao. Of the 4 people on the field, except himself, the other 3 wanted to kill him. This is a sad story. Oh. Chang Jiao narrowed his eyes slightly, and a bit of cold air suddenly emitted from his body. He shot Zhao Xingban with his eyes like a poisonous snake, and let out a chuckle, as light as a contemptuous smile. "I just said, you don't dare. Why do you say I don't dare? People who are about to die are extremely bold." At this moment, Zhao had already smashed the horizontal bar. He felt that he had no fear. After all, he had reached this point, and the worst he could do was to die. Who is afraid of whom? But I don't want to die. Zhao Xingbang encouraged himself a little in his heart, pretending to be tough and said, "Why do you say I don't dare? I'm going to die, who cares about this? Don't you dare." Chang Jiao squinted his eyes, shook his head, and said firmly again, and then he spoke. "Have you forgotten? Right below the planet fragments is Lonely City. What will happen if you throw the Omega light down?" When these words came out of Chang Jiao's mouth, the other 3 people present instantly stiffened. "Yes. How could you forget such an important thing? Directly below this small planet fragment is the Lonely City. If the Omega sublight is thrown from here, it will definitely hit the isolated city." At this time, a picture appeared in the minds of the 3 people. The sky is falling apart. All things are annihilated. Rivers of blood. No one would think that under the fall of Omega sublight, anyone in the isolated city could survive. That's hundreds of thousands of living lives. Ye Jing glanced around and saw that the abyss canyon that spread thousands of miles was created by the falling Omega light. What would it look like if the Omega sublight hit Gukan? Can't imagine. Don't you dare throw it away. If you throw the Omega sublight down and kill hundreds of thousands of people, you will kill your whole family. The Federation will punish your 9 tribes, and the major forces with industries in the isolated city will also punish your 9 tribes. All the humans in Blue Star will kill your 9 tribes. Yes. Although Lonely City is small, it is still a human city. If hundreds of thousands of people died all at once, everyone in Blue Star would go crazy. This is a crime against humanity. Zhao Xingbang's face was ashen. When he thought about the consequences, he couldn't help but shiver all over. He subconsciously controlled the dark spirit energy and pulled the Omega light back from the abyss of the universe. Hundreds of thousands of lives. Not to be offended. I'd better die. Give me. Chang Jiao did not snatch or rob. With his hands behind his back, he looked down at Zhao Danggong, as if he was looking at an ant, and uttered 2 words in a flat tone. Zhao Danggong had no mood on his face, his eyes were cloudy, and he slowly walked towards Chang Jiao like a zombie. Omega sublight cannot be thrown down. It will kill hundreds of thousands of people. The whole family will die. The 2 years kept interweaving in Zhao Danggong's mind, as if his brain was about to be torn apart. The last trump card to survive was gone. Just then, when Zhao Danggong slowly walked towards Chang Xiao. Something happened again. Chang Xiao seemed to have sensed something, his face changed slightly, and he looked up at the sky with a gloomy expression, his hand holding the black gold sword clenched white. Is it coming so fast? A thunderous sound exploded in the sky. A figure like a god, rolling with countless flashes and lightning, carrying supreme power, thundering. The city lord of the lonely city. Li Hui has arrived. Boom. Li Hui landed on the ground, and the canyon shook violently. When the figure touched the ground, the whole canyon shook violently as if there was a major earthquake, and a huge deep pit that was 10 meters deep and covered the entire area appeared. A shock wave as strong as a hurricane spread from the center of the deep pit to the surroundings, like a violent tsunami, rippling to the surroundings. In the blink of an eye, the powerful and majestic impact broke with great force and hit everyone hard. Except for Chang Jiao, who stood still like Mount Tai, Yejing and the other two were all blown away and hit the wall of the canyon together. Why are all of them passive skills? Author, Bulletin Ji Bayet. Chapter 106. The evil wind rises from the sky. The thunder is like 1,000 pounds. A tall figure with deep purple lightning flashing all over his body stood up from the deep pit, step by step, stepped out, with a strong back and strong waist. Every step he took was accompanied by thunderous sound, and the ground seemed to be beating drums, buzzing and shaking. The steps were as heavy as mountains, and every step struck the hearts of everyone and the spirits of Yejing and others. The strong landing of the city lord was like a nuclear bomb explosion, bombarding this canyon. Shock waves full of destruction and thunder spread around, hitting the fragile bodies of Yejing and others fiercely, smashing them heavily against the wall and falling to the ground. Cough cough. Yejing, who fell to the ground, coughed twice, and a trace of blood came out of his mouth. There was a burning pain in his back, and the spiritual energy in his body trembled constantly, as if it would dissipate at any time. Unexpected disaster. Yejing felt the injuries in his body and wanted to cry but had no tears. He had fought for a long time but didn't suffer such serious injuries. Who would have thought that he would be injured by the aftermath of others' landing? It was really terrifying. Yejing looked around and saw a majestic figure like Thor appeared in his sight, deeply engraved in his heart. The Lord of Lonely City. Li Hui. Is it so terrifying? Li Hui exuded a solid thunder from his whole body. Within a radius of several hundred meters, it was radiated by this huge thunder, and there was a slight sense of numbness in the air. The pressure comparable to a mountain torrent and tsunami came from his body, pressing on Yejing's heart, and it was a little difficult to breathe. This is the power of the superior and the realm. Li Hui slowly walked out of the deep pit. He first glanced at Yejing and others, and then found that there were only 3 children, so he stopped paying attention. His sight turned slightly, and he saw the Omega sublight standing in the air, sandwiched between nothingness and illusion. His expressionless face finally showed a touch of excitement, and his fists clenched, and a thunderous sound erupted. Finally, his gaze shifted to Chang Xiao, who was standing still, and a trace of solemnity flashed in his eyes. If anyone in the lonely city could fight him, it was only this pillar who came out of Chang Tian group. Li Hui opened his mouth, and a voice as thick as thunder came out of his mouth. Deputy City Lord Chang, are you sure you want to fight with me? Chang Jiao looked at Li Hui, who was covered with thunder, and couldn't help but reveal a fearful look in his deep eyes. His expression did not change, and he chuckled and said, "Isn't this as it should be?" As soon as the voice fell, Chang Jiao held the sword in one hand, and the black sword made several sword flowers in the air. In the blink of an eye, a black lotus shadow appeared in everyone's sight, lifelike. The first style of Chang Tian swordsmanship. Every sword produces a lotus. As Chang Jiao's wrists were constantly twisted, in just a moment, the sky was full of lotus shadows. No more nonsense, let's start the battle directly. Chang Jiao murmured softly, pointed the black gold sword forward, and like a general, commanded the Black Lotus phantoms that looked like soldiers to smash Li Hui. The sword pointed forward, and the Black Lotus swept through the air. Li Hui looked at the Black Lotus phantoms coming from the sky without changing his expression, and his eyes were as calm as an ancient well. Ha! Suddenly, a thunderous roar roared out from Li Hui's mouth, shaking the earth. Along with the thunderous roar, a series of sound waves carrying lightning and thunder spread to the surroundings, and the sound of crackling continued to come from the air. When the thunderous sound waves touched the Black Lotus phantom, bursts of explosions suddenly came from the air. They actually exploded in pairs. The lotus shadows in the sky were like fragile glass, shattering in an instant. At the same time, the moment the sound waves spread, Li Hui moved. Li Hui's figure suddenly grew a few inches longer, his muscles suddenly burst out, his hair stood up, lightning flashed, and the whole person seemed to be bathed in a thunderbolt. Whoosh! A sound of breaking through the air suddenly burst out. Li Hui's body instantly disappeared from the spot, his huge body was as fast as lightning, and as he moved, the surrounding space trembled. When he appeared again, he was standing in front of Chang Xiao, less than 2 meters away. Li Hui rolled up the power of 10,000 thunders and punched Chang Xiao. The lightning flashed on the fist, and the roaring sound continued. As this punch was thrown, a few inches of tiny black marks appeared on the space it passed. An ordinary punch actually shattered the space. So terrifying. Chang Xiao remained calm and calmly placed the black gold sword across his chest to block Li Hui's fist. At the moment of intersection, Chang Xiao's body suddenly retreated like a cannonball, his feet seemed to be stuck in the ground, motionless, leaving 2 deep marks on the ground, sliding for more than 10 meters before barely stopping. Chang Xiao took Li Hui's punch head on, he shook his arm that was numb from the shock, and couldn't help but be shocked. This punch, I'm afraid it has tens of thousands of pounds of force. If it was replaced by an ordinary Tianming realm, perhaps this punch would be enough to take his life. Compared with Chang Xiao, Li Hui seemed more domineering, perhaps it was related to the martial arts he practiced, and he always exuded an inexplicable domineering aura. He punched out, and before Chang Xiao could react, Li Hui chased directly. The right fist flashed with lightning, and a huge thunder force condensed out, lightning and thunder, and faintly, there was the sound of tigers and wolves grabbing the sky. As the thunder gathered, the surrounding space began to tremble, and the fragile ground shook violently. Countless gravel surged from the ground and floated in the air as if controlled. Thunder flowed through the void, and lightning cut through the space. Within a radius of several hundred meters, it was filled with the power of thunder, as if this area had become Li Hui's domain. At this moment, Li Hui was like the god of thunder, with indestructible power. Slowly, as if in slow motion, it seemed that the speed was too fast and produced countless phantoms. Thor! Blast out this punch! As this punch was blasted out, the world-destroying lightning suddenly appeared and soared into the sky. In the empty sky, the sound of thunder rang like firecrackers. The flying sand and gravel floating within a radius of hundreds of meters, and the billions of thunders within a radius of hundreds of meters, all moved with this punch. Li Hui's punch, with supreme thunder, blasted towards Chang Xiao. Explosive thunder. Li Hui's self-created, extraordinary boxing technique. When this punch was thrown, the sky and the earth changed color. At the same time, Chang Xiao also changed color. Facing this world-destroying punch head-on, Chang Xiao's face finally changed. The sword in his hand quickly passed across his chest, and countless phantoms flashed by. In a second, dozens or hundreds of sword shadows covered the surroundings. Chang Xiao's sword did not stop. 100, 1,000, thousands of black sword lights flashed, forming a black barrier with thousands of layers of interweaving. Chang Tian sword technique. Sword Wan Tian Hua. At this moment, Chang Xiao was like a real sword fairy, motionless. Why are all of them passive skills? Author, Bulletin G. Bayet. Chapter 107. A punch was thrown, the sky and the earth changed color, and the spiritual pressure covered the entire area like a violent tsunami, instantly pushing Yejing and others hundreds of meters away, and they dared not approach. In a battle of this level, one move would be crushed to pieces. Yejing didn't care about anything else at this time, and hurriedly retreated 100 meters to get out of the center of the battle. If he was not careful, even his war of sorrow would be easily hit, which would be a big loss. In the lonely city, the battle between the top masters, the confrontation between the Thunder God and the Sword Immortal, instantly turned the nearby land into powder, and the entire ground was pressed down several meters deep. As the battle became more intense, Li Hui and Chang Jiao both had scars of varying degrees on their bodies. Although they were not fatal, they also caused a little impact. On Li Hui's pair of Manic Zhan Tian's thunder fists, a few traces of blood could be vaguely seen. They were scratched by the black gold sword, and the faint blood dripped quietly. A corner of Chang Jiao's clothes was broken, and a tiny crack appeared on the indestructible black gold sword in his hand. A faint purple electric light surrounded it, as if it had invaded the sword. Thunder and lightning, thousands of swords. The only thing that could not move in this area was the Omega sublight that seemed to not exist in this space. It was like a thing of the gods. No creature, no attack, could hurt him. In the distance, Yejing watched the center of the battle from afar, with shock on his face. Such a strong destructive power was several dimensions lower than his own. Even if he forcibly triggered War of Sorrow, and then added 1,000 layers of God of War combo, or even double attack, the combination could not fight against any of them. Is this the gap in realm? Yejing's heart trembled, and silently, his fists clenched tightly, and a strong unwillingness emerged in his heart. The position in the audience seats made him very unhappy, but there was nothing he could do. A firm idea appeared in his mind. After returning, practice in seclusion. Improve the realm. Without realm, without the blessing of spiritual energy, without the strength of the body, even if there are 100 or 1,000 passive skills, they are useless and cannot be released. Just when Li Hui and his long friend Yu Zhanyu were fighting, just when the surrounding space was very depressing, a sound suddenly came from the canyon above, interrupting Yejing's thoughts and looking up. A figure jumped down from above, inserted the sword in his hand into the wall, slid down the wall, and landed not far in front of Yejing and Ai Xiaokui. Who is this? Yejing was slightly stunned, and looking along the line of sight, it turned out to be an acquaintance, the son of the city lord, Li Ke. When Li Ke was up there, he felt the violent and mixed power in the canyon. He knew without thinking that his father had arrived. After hesitating for a while, he chose to come down. He thought that there were only his father and the people fighting him in the canyon, but he didn't expect that there were others after he came down, which made him feel relieved. When Yejing saw Li Ke also saw Yejing, frowned slightly, thought for a while, and said with a look of sudden enlightenment, "Aren't you the same class as Yejing? The one who can use the 10x Kaioken?" Yejing's face was dark, and he said unhappily, "My name is Yejing, thank you, and I don't know the 10x Kaioken." He didn't communicate much with Li Ke. The only unpleasant conflict was when Li Ke forced him to use the double attack, so he left and never saw him again. No? Did I remember it wrong? Li Ke thought about it again, but found that there were only some messy memories in his mind, so he simply shook his head casually, no longer thinking about it, and replaced his curious expression, and asked, "Why are you here?" He not only saw Yejing, but also Ai Xiaokui who was silent like a statue beside Yejing, and Zhao Danggong who was paralyzed in the corner of the wall in the distance. Yejing spread his hands and shrugged his shoulders. It was obviously me first. Yes, it was obviously them first, but unfortunately, they were not as strong as others. Not long after Li Ke fell, the birdman Gray who had been circling in the sky also landed. The moment he landed, he rushed towards Ai Zyakui, and Ai Zyakui was so scared that he took out his hand blade and looked at him cautiously. "Give me the antidote." Gray handed over a storage bracelet and said breathlessly that the venom in his body had affected his normal flight. If he didn't detoxify, something bad would happen. Ai Zyakui carefully took the storage bracelet, scanned the numbers inside, showed a satisfied silent smile, put it away, and threw a bottle of antidote to Gray. Gray took the antidote and swallowed it impatiently, then showed a relieved smile. He was poisoned and couldn't do anything. After he detoxified, he hesitated and threw another storage bracelet to Yejing, pretending to be generous, and said, "The account is settled." A few bottles of recovery potion cost him 10,000 spirit stones, which was really a loss. But for a business family, reputation is the most important. Even if it is a loss of internal injuries, the transaction must be completed, not to mention just 10,000 spirit stones. Yejing also took it and checked it, smiled, and gave Gray a thumbs up. "Brother, you are generous." Just when they were completing the dirty deal, Li Ke had already walked towards the battle area, ignoring the battlefield full of destructive atmosphere, and shouted at his father. "Why did you call me here?" Li Hui, who was confronting Chang Xiao, was stunned for a moment after hearing the voice. He turned his head subconsciously and saw the lazy Li Ke. He couldn't help but feel angry again, and his anger towards Li Ke increased the strength of his fist. "I'm here, what else do you need me to do?" Li Hui suddenly roared, "Get lost!" Then his fist suddenly appeared like thunder, and the invisible fist shadows blasted towards Chang Jiao with lightning speed. "You asked me to come, and then you asked me to get lost. Okay, get lost, daddy." Li Ke muttered a few words of dissatisfaction and turned away. He didn't notice that the violent thunder emitted by Li Hui had silently protected him. Puff. Chang Jiao just glanced at Li Ke and laughed strangely, then retracted his sight. He disdained to use other means to interfere with this battle. The black gold sword in his hand flashed with a cold light, and a sharp golden light suddenly flashed out, as if the sword light shone through the sky, and the spiritual energy condensed. With each flash, the sword light grew a point. After 9 flashes, the sword light was connected to the sky. A line of long sky. The cold voice suppressed everything, and the sword light slashed towards Li Hui, as if to cut this space and Li Hui in half. The planet fragments were broken. Don't ask why there are children over there, they are useful when they come, otherwise why did I suddenly bring them here? The first volume has finally come to an end. Thank you all for subscribing. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Why are all of them passive skills? Author, Buletin Bayet. Chapter 108. The Changtian line is one of the top 3 most destructive moves among the Changtian sword techniques. It affects a huge range. It is an unrivaled killing move in both strike and destructive power. Faced with this sudden killing move, Li Hui's face suddenly changed. The purple thunder covering his body exploded by more than 10 points. The lightning flashed dazzlingly, covering the entire area of 4 to 5 meters around him without leaving a single gap. "Drink!" Li Hui shouted loudly, which was deafening. The canyon walls trembled with the loud shout, and the thunder in the sky seemed to be blessed, filling the entire thunder realm. A sword light swayed across the sky, and wherever it went, the space shattered, revealing deep space cracks. The earth shattered, and the ground turned into dust and disappeared. The sword light swept into Li Hui's thunder realm with an unstoppable force. Thunder is as heavy as a thunder, which is one of the most violent and powerful attributes in the world. It possesses the domineering power to destroy everything and the energy to crush everything. The moment the long sky line swung into the realm of thunder, it was blocked by tens of thousands of kilograms, and its speed slowly dropped. The terrifying magnetism repelled the thunder, and the sword light was stopped abruptly. This is the confrontation between thunder and Xuanhuan. This is the confrontation between Li Hui and Chang Xiao. It's unclear who is stronger and who is weaker. There is no difference between the two sides, not even the slightest difference. All over the world, the black sword light shines, and the purple thunder covers your eyes. Sudden. A loud bang that resounded through the sky suddenly exploded. Shocking. Li Hui's thunder domain exploded. Thousands of thunders flashed wildly in the canyon like silver snakes, as if they were out of control. That sword light, a sword light across the sky, suddenly changed its movement trajectory with the explosion of the thunder field, and struck the canyon ground 100 meters away from Li Hui. Call. At the same time, Chang Jiao and Li Hui both breathed a sigh of relief. Their foreheads were covered with cold sweat before they knew it. At a level like theirs, a single move would cause their lives to disappear. They were not enemies of life and death. Don't kill anyone. But this time, both of them were angry and powerful, and no one was willing to take a step back. Frequent killing moves? Can't take it back. Fortunately, the two were of equal strength, and no serious consequences occurred. If one of the two people died here today, what would happen next would be a fierce battle between the Li Wang forces and the Changtian group. This was a scene that neither of them wanted to see. Although there are major or minor frictions between the forces on both sides, they are still restrained. It is just a commercial confrontation, and no strong person has fallen. If they die here today, the consequences will be serious, and there may be a war covering the entire Blue Star. The two of them cannot afford this crime. The two of them were dozens of meters apart and looked at each other. They both saw a look of joy in each other's eyes, and were filled with fear. At this time, just when Chang Jiao was about to stop and negotiate for the ownership of the Omega sublight in another way, his eyes suddenly glanced at another place, and his face suddenly changed, revealing a look of panic that had never appeared before. What happened? Li Hui saw the severe panic on Chang Jiao's face, and Bulatin Jin became confused. What could make Chang Jiao tremble so much? He followed Chang Jiao's gaze, and in an instant, his whole body trembled violently, and the ground beneath his feet suddenly shattered. His eyes widened, his expression gradually solidified, and his face suddenly darkened, revealing the same look of fear as Chang Jiao. Follow the gazes of the two people. 100 meters away, the long line between the sky and the sky drew an unfathomable sword mark on the ground, and the piece of land was cut off abruptly. From top to bottom, a corner of the planet fragments, hundreds of kilometers thick, was cut off by Chang Jiao. That small corner of land has broken away from this fragile planetary fragment and is falling downwards. That's not all. This was not something that frightened Li Hui and Chang Jiao at all, but what made them panic violently. The sublight of the Omega beam was also on the small piece of land that fell. The Omega sublight fell directly downwards. And directly below, there is a lonely city. There are hundreds of thousands of humans. The sky is falling apart. A bolt from the blue. Li Hui and Chang Jiao's eyes darkened, their bodies trembled violently, and they almost fainted. In an instant, countless identical thoughts appeared in their minds at the same time. No exceptions. They are all dead. Because the two of them had a good fight and broke a corner of the planet fragments, causing the Omega beam to fall into the isolated city and kill hundreds of thousands of people? Certain death. It's not just them who are going to die. Even their families and the forces they belong to will suffer. Chang Jiao had threatened Zhao Xingban before, but now he was threatening him. No. We must not let the Omega sublight hit the lonely city. Li Hui and Chang Jiao spoke at the same time, saying in unison. Intercept. Must intercept. Fly. 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 Li Hui kept mumbling, and suddenly his eyes flashed with golden light, and he spotted several children 1,000 meters away. One of them was the flying gray. Whoosh! Moment. A flash of purple light passed by. Li Hui appeared 1,000 meters away, appearing directly in front of Gray and the others, startling them. Before Gray could react to what happened, he was caught under Li Hui's armpit and disappeared on the spot, leaving only a few people with confused faces. Yejing asked blankly, "What happened?" Ai Xiaokui shook his head, and Li Ke was hesitating whether to go over to take a look. Yejing turned his eyes and looked over there. Suddenly, his whole body trembled, and he pointed in the direction of that place, and said with a trembling voice, "Where is the Omega sublight?" "What is it?" Li Ke asked curiously. He didn't know why his father had fought with the deputy city lord. So, it was the sublight. Is it good? Unlike Li Ke, Ai Xiaokui knew what the Omega sublight was. When he heard that the sublight was gone, his face changed slightly, and his body turned into a shadow and rushed directly in that direction. No way. Yejing narrowed his eyes and looked at the corner of land that disappeared over there. He took a breath of cold air immediately, and a terrifying guess appeared in his mind. This is a big crisis. Yejing also ignored the danger on the battlefield, and ran over. The moment he arrived at the place, Yejing hurriedly scanned the surroundings. After a carpet search, he did not see the shadow of Omega sublight at all. Looking at the missing corner of land, Chang Xiao, whose face was extremely gloomy, knew what had happened. My God! Omega sublight actually fell. It was actually going to fall on the lonely city. Destroy the world. The most unlikely thing happened. Why are all of them passive skills? Author, Buletin Ji Bayet. Chapter 109. Yejing had a look of horror on his face. He reached the edge of the planet fragments in 2 or 3 steps and looked down, trying to make sure it was what he thought. The moment he started looking at it, his vision went dark, and his brain became confused and buzzing. Really? In the dark, deep, and boundless universe, a light group was flashing directly below him. The light group illuminated a 10-meter radius and slowly fell at an irreversible speed. Omega's sublight has really fallen. And where it fell? It's the lonely city. What can we do? Yejing was confused. He didn't know how to face this matter. Anyone else would be numb at this time and didn't know what to do. Li Hui, the city lord of the isolated city who has experienced few things and reacts the fastest. While Yejing was still lying on the edge of the planet fragments, a figure suddenly appeared next to him. Thunder and lightning flashed past. He jumped high and jumped straight down from the planet fragments. Li Hui didn't jump alone, he jumped with him, and Gray was carried in his hand like a chicken. Gray didn't know what happened. 1 second he was still on the ground, and the next second he was flying into the air. When he opened his eyes, he only saw the bottomless universe. Ah! In an instant, a series of screams came from Gray's mouth. The sound was a little weird, like distorted Chinese. What are you doing? What are you doing? Put me down, put me down, put me down. Gray was carried by Li Hui's hand and fell straight down. Looking around, he saw the boundless universe. He was so frightened that his body kept shaking, and his whole body was dancing and swaying, trying to get out of Li Hui's control. Fly back to the land. Don't move. Li Hui roared fiercely, his tone full of impatience, and his face was extremely gloomy, as if covered with a layer of dense dark clouds. After a roar, Gray was so frightened that he didn't dare to speak. He became quiet like a chicken, looking pitiful and trembling. Uncle Li, what happened? Gray asked in a low voice, with a hint of grievance and confusion in his voice. Li Hui did not reply to him. With a sullen face, his head rushed down, his eyes were filled with crimson bloodshot eyes, and he stared at the light ball below his body. The distance was only a few hundred meters away, and the human body fell very fast. Fly! Fly! Li Hui suddenly discovered that Gray didn't even show his wings, and couldn't help roaring. The two of them kept falling against the surface of the planet's fragments. Oh oh oh! Gray's mind was confused, but he did not dare to resist Li Hui's words. He subconsciously spread his wings, a pair of Birdman mutant wings that were more than 1 meter long, stretched out. The moment their wings spread out, their bodies suddenly stopped in mid-air, motionless. Uncle Li, let me say it before. Each time I fly, it can only last for 10 minutes. It is impossible to fly directly to Gukan. Gray reminded him, fearing that Li Hui would let him fly all the way to Lonely City. Li Hui ignored Gray's words and had only one thought in his mind. Be sure to keep the Omega sublight. We must not let it fall to the Lonely City. Li Hui grabbed the collar of Gray's neck, put a strong hand on the back of Gray's head, forced his head down, and said in a deep voice, "Did you see that ball of light? Hurry! Speed! Fly over immediately!" The order was given very quickly. Gray was slightly startled at first and looked at the light group that Li Hui said with doubt. Moment. Gray's pupils shrank sharply, and he said with a trembling voice, "Then that isn't the Omega sublight, is it? Something big has happened." "What nonsense!" "Hurry," Li Hui urged harshly. "Time waits for no one. Although at this speed, it will take several hours to land on the Lonely City." "But it's only a few hours." Gray was also shocked by this sudden turn of events. He flapped his wings wildly and hurriedly turned around. With Li Hui hanging on his head, he flew quickly towards the Omega sublight. I have to say that it is convenient to be able to fly by yourself, and it is also very fast, but it is not long-lasting. A few hundred meters apart, both sides were falling, but only a minute later, Gray was leaning next to the Omega sublight. The fall continued, and the distance between the two sides was controlled to a minimum of 2 meters. Half of Gray's body was integrated into the light emitted by the sublight. 2 meters. Gray thought for a moment, then moved slightly closer. Suddenly, a hot and destructive breath spurted out from the Omega sublight. Ah! In an instant, Gray's body shook suddenly and violently, and the smell of braised chicken wings came from behind him. When he turned around, he felt like crying. When he just moved forward, he forgot about the length of his wings, so that the wings were too close to the Omega light, and a small part of the wings was burned. It hurts. This wing was connected to his body, and it was also his flesh. Such heavy damage made his body unstable, and he fell for several meters before he stopped. "Don't move!" Li Hui roared softly, and he who was originally hanging on Gray's body, now stepped on Gray's back. His body gradually stabilized, as if he was walking on flat ground. "Get closer!" Li Hui commanded in a deep voice, his eyes fixed on the Omega Ziguang, his forehead already covered with sweat. "Move to the left. Don't move." Controlling the speed of their fall, the two of them moved parallel to the Omega sublight, and the distance was already less than 2 meters. At this time, Li Hui slowly stretched out a hand. In his hand, he held a storage bracelet inlaid with a deep silver magic core. This was a storage equipment made by a high-level space-based monster. It was also the best space equipment in his hand. Li Hui slowly approached the Omega sublight and threw the silver bracelet over. "You must bear it." Li Hui's face was solemn and he became nervous. When the silver bracelet touched the Omega sublight, several fine cracks appeared on the surface of the bracelet itself. In the blink of an eye, they covered the entire bracelet. The next second, the silver magic core also shattered. Bang! With a slight sound, the highest level space equipment in Li Hui's hand exploded. This scene made Li Hui feel cold in his heart and his face turned pale. Space equipment. Unable to withstand the energy of annihilation and destruction emitted by the Omega sublight, It exploded directly. This method does not work. Li Hui exhaled deeply, exhaled the foul air in his stomach, and took another deep breath, filling his stomach. No matter what. At this moment, he must recover the Omega sublight before it falls. Even if it is not for his own future safety. It must also be for the hundreds of thousands of humans in the lonely city. Why are all of them passive skills? Author, Bouletin G. Bayet. Chapter 110. Li Hui breathed a sigh of relief. If one way doesn't work, there is another way. I saw him stretching out a hand towards the Omega sublight. A hand filled with thunder and endless lightning stretched out towards the Omega sublight. He dare not touch the sublight. Any creature that directly touches the Omega sublight will be annihilated into its original energy form, without exception. The hand filled with thunderous thunder came close to the Omega sublight. With a slight press, countless thunder lights suddenly appeared, enveloping the entire Omega sublight in an instant. If you can't directly touch the Omega sublight, then use another method, wrap it with spiritual energy, and then carry it. Zhao had used this method before on the horizontal bar, running for several kilometers with Omega light. However, that is only because the dark spiritual energy he cultivates is 1/10,000th similar to the Omega sublight, which can cause resonance and attract the Omega sublight to move together. And what about Li Regret? His thunder attribute aura cannot resonate with the Omega sublight at all. After the endless thunder enveloped the Omega sublight, it all exploded before Li Hui could take any action. All the thunder power was broken down into the original energy by the Omega light in a matter of minutes, and flowed out into the universe. It's of no use at all. 1 minute later, the Omega sublight was still there, not stopping its own fall at all, and continued to fall towards the lonely city. Unstoppable. Even Li Hui, who is at the peak of the destiny realm, has no way to do anything. Hiss. Li Hui looked at the power of thunder that disappeared without a trace, and couldn't help but take a breath of cold air. His eyes widened, and an idea came to his mind. Something big happened. He has no choice. Things happened so suddenly, and there was no preparation for anything. How could it be possible to block the Omega sublight? Impossible. From the time he learned about the existence of Omega sublight, to rushing to the planet fragments, to the fall of Omega sublight, a lot of things happened. But only more than 2 hours have passed. It is less than 10 species away from the fall of the Omega sublight. How could anyone be prepared to block it? Li Hui's face darkened immediately. He stared at the lifeless and falling Omega sublight, closed his eyes, and thought about the countermeasures that could be used now. There is no way. When he opened his eyes again, Li Hui seemed to have made up his mind. He gritted his teeth and said coldly, "Go back." Gray silently flew back to the planet fragments. At this time, the situation was critical, and he could only cooperate with Li Hui's actions. When he landed again, a figure flashed directly in front of Li Hui. At this moment, Chang Jiao no longer had his usual calm expression, but was replaced by a nervous expression. "What's going on? Can you stop me?" Li Hui shook his head with a dark face. "There is nothing we can do. Without special tools, we can't stop it at all." "Yes, I should have thought of it earlier." Chang Jiao murmured with dull eyes, thinking that everything was over. The Omega light falling into the lonely city would definitely destroy the whole city, and that would be hundreds of thousands of lives. It's over. All is lost. If he commits a heinous crime, he will definitely not be able to escape. Not only that, but he will also implicate the Changtian group. At this time, Li Hui expressed his decision. After all, Chang Jiao was also the deputy city lord of Gukan and was qualified to know. Li Hui said in a deep voice, "Issue an emergency crisis announcement, contact the Federation to send an airship, no, a large spaceship, move everyone away." This. Chang Jiao looked hesitant. If he contacted the Federation now, then the fault of the two of them would be settled, and no matter what the consequences would be, the two of them would bear the responsibility. However, he only hesitated for a few seconds before making up his mind, nodded firmly, and agreed to Li Hui's suggestion. Make a prompt decision. Time is precious. Li Hui immediately straightened his face and said quickly, I will contact the people in Gukan and issue an emergency crisis announcement. You contact the Federation and request a large spaceship to land. The two have a clear division of labor. After Li Hui finished speaking, he directly opened the contact device with the Gukan City Lord's mansion and directly contacted his office secretary. City Lord, what are your orders? The secretary said. Li Hui said in a solemn tone and quickly, as the Lord of Gukan, I am giving an order. Gukan will immediately issue an emergency crisis announcement and notify the whole city to go outside Nanjing for emergency evacuation. In the isolated city, there is no place that can accommodate the landing of a large spaceship, so everyone can only be transferred outside the city. Emergency crisis announcement. What happened? City Lord, the secretary asked in surprise, with a very shocked tone. The entire isolated city has not issued an emergency crisis announcement for more than 10 years. Don't ask, just follow it. Immediately. Release it immediately. Li Hui's voice turned cold and he scolded coldly. Yes, the secretary immediately shut up when he heard that Li Hui's voice was wrong. Just as he was about to hang up the communicator, he suddenly thought of something and asked again, but, what level of crisis announcement is issued? What level? Li Hui was startled for a moment, then said in a deep voice, Dragon level, probably. Dragon level. The secretary's voice suddenly rose several pitches, and he knew from his tone that Li Hui was not joking. His whole body trembled, a look of fear appeared on his face, and he hurriedly responded, yes. Then he hung up the phone and ran out of the office. On Blue Star, there is a set of standardized disaster levels. Level 1, endangering the safety and normal order of the city. Level 2, causing a large number of human casualties in a single city. Level 3, causing a large number of human casualties in multiple cities, and disorder. Dragon level, a single city suffered a devastating blow. World level, multiple cities suffered a devastating blow at the same time, and there was no order. God level, destroying the world. Note, 100 years ago, the Omega beam penetrated the entire solar system, which was defined as a cosmic disaster. Now, although there are constant wars on Blue Star, there are many frictions between cities and alien races on the surrounding planetary fragments. But the release of the Dragon level crisis announcement is still very rare, and there are very few. At the same time, Chang Jiao also contacted the Federation. The headquarters of the Federation is located in the Imperial City, the center of Blue Star. The lowest staff of the headquarters are all in the underground palace realm, even a person responsible for receiving senior executives from various cities. The receptionist said, hello, please tell me the name of the city, position, title, and realm. Chang Jiao didn't have time to waste time talking to him, and spoke quickly, blurting out everything. Chang Jiao, the Deputy City Lord of Gukan. The peak of the destiny realm of Changtian Group. Now Gukan has a dragon-level disaster, and the Federation is required to urgently send a large spacecraft to Gukan to receive the people, the number is hundreds of thousands. Very urgent. The dragon-level disaster is expected to occur in 2 hours. There are still hundreds of thousands of people in the city. Immediately. Right now. Come. Pick them up. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Why are all of them passive skills? Author, Bouletin Bayet. Chapter 111. Although it is noon in the isolated city, It is dark and dark. The sky is covered with dark clouds, the wind is strong, and there are lightning and thunder from time to time. It seems that the downpour will end at any moment. It's raining today. This is what the weather forecast said, and it's very accurate. Although it will rain, people's lives will continue. People selling vegetables, people going to work, all kinds of footsteps passing by in a hurry, will not stop because of small obstacles. And this time, above the lonely city, in the air, suddenly there was a deafening siren that resounded through the sky, and a huge and harsh electronic synthesized sound came from the central area of Gukhan over and over again, echoing throughout the whole city. Emergency notice. Emergency notice. A major disaster has occurred. The disaster level has been determined to be Dragon level. All citizens of the lonely city are requested to take refuge outside Nanchinj immediately. Emergency notice. Emergency notice. A major disaster has occurred. The disaster level has been determined to be Dragon level. All citizens of the lonely city are requested to take refuge outside Nanchinj immediately. Emergency notice. Emergency notice. A major disaster has occurred. The disaster level has been determined to be Dragon level. All citizens of the lonely city are requested to take refuge outside Nanchinj immediately. This short sentence and the piercing siren were repeated incessantly, instantly touching the hearts of all the citizens of the isolated city. Dragon-level disaster? What is this? What is a dragon-level disaster? Some citizens stood there in confusion, not sure what a dragon-level disaster was. Not only that, many people didn't even know what a disaster was. Dragon-level disaster. A dragon-level disaster can happen in such a remote place as Gukhan? Quick! Send me out of the city. The fire demon is about to invade again? He has issued announcements one after another. Is there going to be a whole city war? The noisy announcements spread throughout Gukhan. Moment. The lonely city is in chaos. Panic, fear, cowardice, violence, greed, and other negative emotions filled the entire isolated city. The streets were filled with people in messy clothes, crowded with beeping vehicles, family owners burdened with the family's assets, wailing children, violent and arrogant practitioners, and several messy aircraft in the sky. Everyone in the entire isolated city was moving chaotically towards the outside of Nanchinj. They don't know when the disaster will happen, but they all want to survive. In front of the city lord's palace, Wang Hai, the commander of the Gukhan law enforcement team, has entered a fighting state. In front of him are hundreds of law enforcement officers, including old people who survived last time and newcomers this time. Wang Hai faced the law enforcement officers and issued his first order since taking office. 1 group, 2 groups, and 3 groups maintain order in the city. Protect the personal safety of citizens. Force the streets to be sorted. Send all citizens out of the city as quickly as possible. After saying this, Wang Hai paused and issued another astonishing order. 4 groups and 5 groups, demolish the city wall. Yes. Imperial City Federation Headquarters. The receptionist was startled by the words that came out of Chang Jiao's mouth with a look of astonishment. When he realized the seriousness of the matter, he immediately said seriously, "This matter is not within my authority. I will transfer it to the director immediately." The efficiency of handling major events was still very fast. Just a few seconds later, a majestic voice reached the ears of Chang Jiao. This was a higher-level manager, a member of the Federal Council. "I am Director Yang who is on duty today. Please give me an overview." The communications that can be directly transferred to him are usually major events, so what he said is very short. "I am the Deputy City Lord of Gukhan and a long-term friend of the Changtian Group. A dragon-level disaster is about to occur in Gukhan. There are still hundreds of thousands of citizens in the city. Please send a large spaceship immediately to take them away from Gukhan." Chang Jiao said very quickly. Lonely city? Dragon-level disaster. Director Yang's tone was slightly surprised. He only had one impression of the name Gukan. It was a small town in a remote area of Blue Star. How could a dragon-level disaster occur in such a small town? But when he heard that there were still hundreds of thousands of citizens, his heart suddenly tightened, and the expression on his face became solemn, and he asked again, "You are a long-term friend of Changtian Group, right? You have to be responsible for what you said. Are you sure? It is very troublesome to mobilize large spaceships, including manpower, financial resources, etc., not to mention flying across the city, and the channels may need to be adjusted. If a dragon-level disaster occurs, then the Federation has the responsibility and obligation to bear all this. After all, the Federation is the manager of the entire Blue Star and is responsible for the entire Blue Star human race. But if it does not happen, then Changjiao will be responsible for all this. Whether it is labor costs or financial expenses, Changjiao will pay for it. Not only that, Changjiao is also legally responsible for his deception of the Federation. I'm sure, Changjiao said decisively, time waits for no one. Okay. Now dispatch the large spaceship to Gukan immediately. All channels will be cleared, and we will head to Gukan as quickly as possible. After repeated confirmation, Director Yang agreed directly. After saying that, he hung up the communication directly. After Director Yang agreed, Changjiao breathed a sigh of relief. There was already a cold sweat behind him, and the sweat soaked all his clothes. Even those who are as strong as the peak of Tianming will still be nervous at this juncture. Two people. Li regret and long friendship. City Lord and Deputy City Lord. In just a moment, they did everything they could do at the moment, with a clear division of labor. Liwi issued a notice and transferred the entire city to seek refuge outside Nanjing. Changjiao contacted the Imperial City Federation headquarters and asked for a large spaceship to pick up people. As long as all the citizens of the city arrived outside the South City and the large spaceship arrived in the Lonely City, everything would be fine. As long as people were not dead, it was acceptable. The homeless citizens were resettled by the Federation, and the destroyed city was rebuilt by Changjiao Group and Li Wang's forces. It was just a city, and it was a small amount of money in front of the two major forces. But is there time? Can you catch up? After waiting anxiously for a few minutes, a communication sound rang again. It was Changjiao's communicator, and the caller was Director Yang. Changjiao and Li Hui looked at each other, and turned on the speaker after the call was connected. Director Yang said, "Large spaceships have been mobilized. In order to prevent hundreds of thousands of people from being left behind, 10 large spaceships have been dispatched, which can accommodate millions of people. They are now ready and are expected to arrive in Lonely City in 3 hours. 3 hours. The head officer was stunned for a moment and said in a hurried tone, 3 hours will be too late. Fly faster. At most 2 hours. 2 hours is impossible." Director Yang was silent for a moment and said, "From the Imperial City to the Lonely City, the channel avoidance is already the fastest speed. It is already very good to arrive in 3 hours. Originally, I wanted to mobilize large spaceships from other cities, but unfortunately, I found out that Lonely City is the closest in the Imperial City after looking at the map. Why are all of them passive skills?" Author, Bulletin G. Bayet. Chapter 112. What is the speed at which Omega sublight falls? How long will it take before falling into the Lonely City? Liwi and Changjiao roughly estimated the distance between the planet fragment Dao Gukan based on the falling speed of the Omega light. 3 hours and 13 minutes. 3 hours and 13 minutes later, the Omega sublight will accurately fall on the Lonely City. Cause human tragedy. And this time is only the time when the Omega light has just fallen. Don't forget, several minutes are wasted before the spacecraft sets off. According to Director Yang, It takes 3 hours for the spacecraft to reach Gukan. It also takes at least 4 hours to transport citizens. Where did that 1 hour gap come from? Where to find it? There simply isn't enough time. This time, not only Chang Xiao, but Li Hui beside him was also worried. He grabbed the communicator in Chang Xiao's hand and said hurriedly, "I can't make it in 3 hours. 2 hours, we must reach Gukan within 2 hours." There was a period of silence from the communicator, and the sound of heavy breathing was clearly audible. After the silence, Director Yang said solemnly, "We will try our best and fly at full speed. And I will also immediately mobilize the urban flight equipment around Gukan to fly as quickly as possible. Reach Gukan as quickly as possible. Chang Xiao. Li Hui. After a long time, a slightly hoarse voice came out of Li Hui's mouth. "All right." 2 words, full of helplessness, "No way, really no way." The isolated city is located in a remote location, surrounded by some small cities, and is very far away from large cities. Even the nearest imperial city takes 3 hours to fly to. Looking around in confusion, is there anyone else on the planet fragments nearby? City Lord Li Hui, Deputy City Lord Chang Xiao, Gray who can fly, Yejing, Ai Xiaokui, Li Ke who is at a loss, and Zhao who is lying dead on the horizontal bar. What's the use? It's of no use. A series of conversations between the 2 city lords were not concealed, and they all fell into the ears of Yejing and others. At this time, they, the juniors, had no choice but to stand there in a daze, unable to do anything. Yejing was also very confused. How could so many things happen in such a short period of time? 1 second he and Ai Xiaokui were chasing Zhao Xingban, and the next second Chang Jiao and Liwi were airborne. 1 second he was on the edge of OB preparing to retreat, and the next second the fragments of the planet were shattered, and the Omega Light fell into the lonely city. This incident developed so fast and suddenly that he was not even mentally prepared and unable to react. Etc. Etc. Yejing forced himself to calm down, took a deep breath, and exhaled it again. He repeated this several times before regaining his composure. Calm down, calm down. Yejing kept telling himself to calm down and organize his thoughts in his mind. What's going on now? The Omega sublight will fall into the lonely city in 3 hours. However, the large spacecraft from the federal headquarters will take another 3 hours to arrive, and it will take more than an hour to transport citizens. Yejing raised his head and looked not far away. The faces of Li Hui and Chang Jiao were very gloomy and dim, as if they already knew some kind of answer, but they just didn't dare to think about it. In other words, it's too late. Yejing's eyes showed confusion. Could it be that the lonely city was going to be destroyed? Could it be that all the people in Gukan are going to die? In an instant, many images appeared in his mind. He thought of the ants' family selling breakfast downstairs at home. He thought of the lazy tram driver. He thought of the teachers in school. He thought of the kindergarten across the road from the school. He thought of the countless passers-by passing by. It shouldn't have ended like this. Yejing couldn't help but murmured, Gukan is small, very remote, and poor. But, it shouldn't end like this. Is there any other way? Yejing asked himself in his heart. Li Hui and Chang Jiao in the distance were helpless and could only wait for rescue with a sullen expression, praying that time would catch up. And what can I do? Can't give up. Yejing grew thought. Bit by bit, the light of hope lit up in his heart. Don't do it. Just sit back and wait for death. Do. There will be hope. What can be done? Yejing first turned over his storage bracelet. What was in it? Gravel, spirit stones, debris, scrap metal, rags, blank bullets, and a grenade. A pile of rubbish. Yejing cursed fiercely, I am really mentally ill to look through the storage bracelet. I don't even know how poor I am. The only one who can reverse such a desperate situation and have a chance to block the Omega sublight is the mysterious furnace. Yejing directly put his consciousness into the furnace space to find a way. The only passive skill that is useful now is Sorrow of War, which can be immune to a fatal attack. Could it be that we want to use Sorrow of War to defeat Omega sublight? Yejing frowned. Could War of War be able to touch the Omega sublight without dying? Able. Yejing is still very confident in Sorrow of War, and he can still block an attack of Omega sublight. But then what? What to do next? He has the blessing of Sorrow of War and can touch the Omega sublight once. What next? But what then? Gone. He can touch the Omega sublight? But there is no way to get rid of it? He can touch the Omega sublight once, but not a second time. It is so cruel. What's the use of touching it? Yejing frowned and had a headache. Only at the critical moment can we see that the trump card is not enough. Is there anything else that can be used? Yejing scanned the furnace, his eyes fixed on it. This is his only hope. If there is a way to stop the Omega sublight from falling, it is only this furnace. What way? What way? Yejing's forehead was covered with sweat. His eyes were fixed on the furnace. His brain was working rapidly, thinking about all the countermeasures that could be thought of now. Extract, synthesis, combination. Extract, synthesis, combination. Extract, synthesis, combination. When Yejing put his eyes on the function. Instant. It was as if a bolt of lightning struck from the sky, instantly breaking his inherent thoughts. A flash of inspiration suddenly appeared, and his originally dim eyes suddenly burst into a strong and dazzling brilliance. Is it possible? Is it possible? Yejing murmured in a trembling voice, his body trembling uncontrollably, and his trembling hand slowly clicked on the combination function. The combination function was turned on, and a 9-square grid with 9 item grids appeared in Yejing's sight. The 9-square grid was quietly suspended in front of the furnace, and the 9 grids were empty, with nothing placed.